Learning is the key to having a healthy and fulfilling life. We are hardwired to do it, but it can seem really daunting when there's so little apparent organization and structure on how to go about it outside of higher learning institutions. And even and especially within those, the appearance of order may just be a facade for a badly cobbled together repackaging of research and content developed elsewhere and then sold back to you at a huge markup. Besides the obvious issues with this deeply flawed business model, it can create a lot of cognitive dissonance about the process of learning itself, and in fact be very mentally damaging. School, at its core, is supposed to teach you how to learn, how to think critically, and all of those noble things have really been lost along the way in our modern education paradigm. But no worries. A lot of people are working really, really hard right now to fix it, and I hope that this method might help contribute to a meaningful breakout from that old way, and someday link up with the solutions that other people are developing. So, after studying early childhood development and psychology, full disclosure, this is not what my degree is in. I pursued it independently, and I worked for a while in an occupational therapy clinic. But the very obvious conclusion about the whole of human learning is that it is done through play. The two are synonymous. The farther they get from one another, the more both of them suffer in quality. Playing without some stakes, without some kind of measurable achievement or win condition, ends up not really being that fun. And learning without some playful, engaging element doesn't hold our attention enough to be effective. So they have to be balanced, regardless of the age or ability level of the participant. As we get older, the games become more complex, with more interconnected elements. And this is especially true in video games, so I wanted to touch for a moment on video game addiction. Video games should, in concept, be the single greatest educational tool at our disposal. But because of the economic tug-of-war between the cost of their production and the kind of qualities that they need to possess to be marketable, most of what we get is garbage. The characteristics, like all advertising, play at our insecurities, our needs. They cater to and breed short attention spans and give us little jolts of instant gratification, just like a drug. But they can be triumphant works of art and culture, too. They can tell great stories, and they can employ some of the most talented people on the planet to solve intense design problems, programming issues, and push technology and art to new heights. Like all tools, it does really come down to the way that they're used. So I asked the question, can we apply some of the interfaces used to manage alter ego characteristics in role-playing games, for instance, to our real lives in order to better organize and plan our personal growth? Let me ask you this. Have you ever truly sat down and taken stock of your accomplishments? All of them. All of your current ability levels, skills, hobbies, not just as they look snappy on your resume or a professional profile, but all of the things that really matter to you and your development. It's likely that you have done this to some extent, but gotten stuck somewhere, not knowing exactly where to go from there or how to get better at something outside of gaining a higher degree or some sort of certification. Maybe you have a really amorphous goal, like, I want to get better at art, I want to be more physically fit. But these things are really hard to quantify, and it makes it very difficult for us to set the kind of incremental goals that we can use as guiding benchmarks toward the accomplishment of a larger goal. In a video game, the possibilities are usually clearly laid out in the form of a skill tree. And it's got its own code words and nuances that correlate to the various character types within that particular game. It sounds pretty dumb and obvious. Surely someone has concocted such a diagram by now. But a quick Google search yields a lot of clickbait articles lamenting that there isn't one, basically. So, what the heck? Let's bust one out right now. Specific topical self-improvement videos are really great, but wouldn't it be nice to have an entire roadmap? Dream, if you will, with me for a moment, what the final form of this is going to look like. I have the series of videos planned to introduce the main headings, but this is something that I'm actually working toward developing as an application that people will be able to utilize. And this is going to be a crucial piece of our community website. But one step at a time. Here's a super rough mock-up of what this nodal branching structure might start to look like. How I think that it's going to work is that each member is going to go through an evaluation where a moderator, I really like the word ally better, we'll workshop it. It's basically going to be like a credit transfer audit, might be like for a college, or a portfolio review. Basically, you present some evidence of your aptitude that you've achieved in all of the fields available. The counselor is just going to verify that yes, you do these things for the sake of truth, accuracy, authenticity. They're going to actually go through and check that you have some evidence. Because I have this crazy notion that a system like this could eventually be used more reliably for vetting people in job or collaboration prospects instead of the stupid half-automated job hokey pokey that we do these days. It's such a waste of everyone's time. Stupid interview questions that are inane and insulting. So I want to develop a real track record with real permanence, about things that really matter. And what's more, real credit and a sense of pride over things that you have accomplished in life that are completely disregarded by most professional situations that just throw them out, even though they're the very essence of your dedication and what makes you who you are. So each node provides you with a wealth of credible learning resources, books, courses, links, even research and work from our own members to help you on your journey to achieving a mastery of that subject. So you can use your time more effectively while studying. And as you study and participate, you can activate and advance through higher nodes. And the people who are similarly interested will then know to come to you for mentorship, if you are so inclined. Which you should be, because teaching is the single most effective way to learning a subject more thoroughly yourself. Before you know it, maybe overpriced college is finding itself rendered obsolete from freely available online learning community, and it has to reevaluate its chokehold on our lives. Maybe then the tyrannical institutions will start to fall down one by one like dominoes in the face of the naked truth. We can dream. But dreams take action. So let's get back on task here. I've divided up my understanding of learning into 6 core disciplines. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but this bit at least is pretty solidly based on more early childhood developmental stuff. Usually they are called developmental domains. I didn't really like the terminology, so in my infinite arrogance, I have tried to sync them up with more memorable ones, and the ones that I think will be more applicable for adults, and also that correlate better to video game terminology. We do have to pay respect to the fact that old school RPG systems have endured some of the most strenuous testing. So many instances, so many repetitions, so many games have been played, right? Just because it wasn't specifically in the context of scientific inquiry, things that didn't work were discarded over several decades. And the things that were left behind, to me, are very universal, and I think most would agree. So I'll offer and compare both. One, so you can have that point of reference, and 2, to give you some insight into my own process and how I came to these conclusions. My goal, above all else, is to build your trust. You are here watching my work. I'm not going to be right about everything all the time. In fact, it's better if I'm not. And the errors might have specific reasoning, and the corrections might mean even more. But you need to be able to trust my process if I'm going to be of any sort of value to you as an example for your own process, right? So, instead of the physical domain, which is the umbrella term for behaviors involving the body and motor skills, I split it between agility and dexterity, which are kind of cardinal stats of any RPG system. For childhood development, there is another system which is 5 areas or school readiness, and it omits the term aesthetic domain entirely, and I agree with that, actually, out of the 6-piece system. Because to me, there are elements of it present among each of the other disciplines. So what we still end up with is 6, but we trade in 1, and we split another one up into 2. I hope that makes sense. That is the main deviation that I have made, and hopefully it will make sense why. Again, these are conclusions that I have derived from my personal experience, and I hope that you'll find them relevant. Agility, in my definition, is the body as a whole, distinguished from dexterity, which is more about the fine motor skills and using your hands. I learned this from my OT experience and how different learning difficulties can be really specific to each of those areas. So the therapy methods can be really specific to either hand problems or total body awareness problems. So each of these larger heading core disciplines is going to get a separate video and go into specifics of its 2 main divisions of study, which will touch on each as a broad topic here, right? Agility is about the body working harmoniously with itself, its internal systems, so circulation, breathing, metabolism, balance, and awareness of your own mass and movement through space. Its subdivisions are business and performance art. And as I said, we'll break that down a bit more in the future videos. So dexterity is then the fine detail work, the grip, the reaction time, steadiness, and all-around control. It's also gentleness and appropriate application of force, ability to use tools, and manipulate objects in 3D space. So the subdivisions are sculpture/applied art. I'm not sure what kind of terminology you might have been exposed to in school. We had classes called applied art, basically 3D art, more heavy design materials. And then medicine. Adaptive is the word that I use in place of the emotional domain, and it's a good sized chunk of what would probably belong to the aesthetic domain. We might put that here too. To me, emotional regulation is really interchangeable with adaptability. In contrast to the social domain, which has to do with the outer world, this is your inner world, and the way that you set this up determines the way that you will respond to your environment. I feel like to just use the word emotion makes it seem at least kind of set or stagnant, and at worst it might imply that it's out of your control. So I chose the word adapt as the act of feeling. The subdivisions then are visual art, music might need to be included in that, I think that's probably where it'll go, and psychology, of course. The social sphere goes in next. If you think of these 6 divisions as the 3 realms of our experience, physical, emotional, and mental, the social and the adaptive work together to become the emotional experience, if that makes sense. So social is the outer world of how we form relationships with other people, our behaviors, and the way that we portray ourselves and our human experience, but not necessarily communication. This one's a little tricky. Basically, this is nonverbal communication, the behaviors and actions that we take to regulate our social situations. So, for actually developing or studying this phenomenon, I've subdivided between history and anthropology. I realize that these are very similar things because anthropology can refer to historical human studies, but I'm more implying it in the contemporary observations with an emphasis on social exchanges. But I didn't want to put a word like economics here. It might be that sociology is actually a more appropriate word, but essentially it's the study of hierarchy and the social order. That's what we're talking about. Language is pretty straightforward. It's all of the communication skills, verbal and written. It's the way that we express our ideas. So that puts it in the mental third of human experience. Though, of course, it's closely related to the social sphere, keep in mind that all of these functions are intimately connected, and there's overlap in all of them. So the subdivisions are speaking and writing, and they are the cornerstone for being able to communicate any information about any of these other areas. Cognitive covers the academic disciplines, the mental realm, ideas, research. Of course, this is an absolutely massive category, organizing information, drawing conclusions. We have such a sprawling wealth of knowledge, which is constantly growing at a rapid pace. So mental discipline, above all else, requires being able to categorize and make proper associations between thoughts and experiences. The subdivisions might be thought of as learning versus teaching, but I have labeled them STEAM and education to better fit with how they are categorized in the current educational institutions. And yes, there is an A in there, because I have never understood for the life of me how architecture is omitted when engineering is right there. Maybe that's getting too personal, I don't know. But being that we spend the majority of our lives in buildings, which we have to design, it seems fairly consequential intellectual pursuit, no? These are the 6 core disciplines or domains. They can be considered universal for every stage of life, early development included, so it's a pretty handy starting point for first principles thinking and keeping everything organized. We will now go on to discuss their subdivisions at length, with examples of actual activities that go into developing these things. I hope that it will be a stable basis for clear communication and collaboration later. And if in the future we could make education freely available for everyone in the world and more effectively uplift each other instead of hiding it between gatekeepers, socio-economic status, and paywalls, I think that's a really beautiful dream, and I hope that each of you will dream it with me. Thank you for watching this.